Greetings, Martians, and welcome back to my universe. I am Mike the Universal Artist, bringing you another gardening blog. And today, we will be discussing transplanting your plant starts into larger containers. And if you want to know how I do this and more, then stay tuned. But before we get started, if you are new to my channel, welcome. And please like, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell. That way, whenever I upload any new content, you'll be the first to know. And if you're a returning viewer, it's great to see you again. Thanks for coming back. Now we're going to discuss the best soil types to use when transplanting your plants indoors. You want to find a loose, well-draining soil that will allow your plant's roots to grow and expand as your plant gets larger. Topsoils are better used for outdoors or in raised beds because they have a more of a dense material than potting soils. So when growing or transplanting indoors, go for the potting soil mixes versus any topsoils. Some of the soils that I use for growing are Eco Scraps, which is an organic blend. Also Lambert germination mix. It's a great large scale, high grade mix that you can use for farming as well as starting any seeds. And then the last thing, Miracle Grow. Miracle Grow is a very popular brand, but it is great for starting any plants indoors as well as outdoors. They have a good mix of minerals and nutrients inside of the soil already, so you can use those for transplanting your plants indoors as well. And you can always find these at your local Lowe's or Home Depot. And for the Lambert germination mix, you can find it at lambertorganics.com, or you could even find it on Amazon. I'll link everything in the description below, so no worries. Alright, so a few tools that you'll need for the job is you'll need a flower pot of your choice, you'll need soil, a water pail, fertilizer, as well as a hand trowel, which is what you use to dig through the soil. Now what I'm going to do is add small amounts of soil at a time, because typically when you buy potting soil from the store, it already comes pre-moistened in a way. So you don't really have to add but so much water, but I still encourage this. But because mine has been sitting for a while, it's dried out a little bit, so I'm going to add a little bit of soil at a time and then water a little at a time to ensure that that water is completely throughout the flower pot and we don't have any pockets of dryness or air pockets where once your plant starts to grow, those roots are growing into those dry air pockets rather than the moist soil, which is the new home for the pot. So that's just what I'm going to do. Just add a little at a time, water it down as densely as I possibly can, and then go back and add more and more and more to that mix. Also, whether the soil is moist or dry like mine, you will find little clumps or balls of soil throughout the bag. So you should just take it in your hand, break that soil on up so it's nice and loose and that you don't have these large clumps throughout that's also not getting full water, and when the plant grows it's going into those dry clumps or being blocked and not really growing to its full potential. So make sure you break up any of those large or small clumps that you see throughout the soil, fully watering as you go to make sure that that plant has a nice moist home to go into once you transplant it from your starter kit to your pot. Now remember, you will be adding dry fertilizer to this mix as well, so this also helps benefit with that soil making full contact with the fertilizer as well as the roots of the plant that you're putting into the new space. As moist as you can get the soil right away, the beneficial. And then once you transplant this plant, you want to water this plant about once every week unless you have very humid and hot conditions, and then you want to up the amount that you water to maybe 2 to 3 times a week. But around this time of the year when it's not as hot, the soil is not drying up as quickly unless you have it on a heater inside of your home, you really only need to water this once a week. And then from that point you can judge how often you need to water your plant depending on how dry it gets over the time once it's made full contact and started to develop new starts or new growth on your plant. Now let's get into fertilizers. There are two types of fertilizers, dry and liquid. Dry fertilizer gives you a slow release of nutrients to the plant's roots over time, whereas liquid fertilizer gives the roots an immediate boost of nutrients and food to the plant's roots to sustain how the plant grows throughout the season. Both are extremely beneficial. I tend to use both. I just monitor my increments of when I actually add the liquid fertilizer. But I suggest using both when you're doing indoor versus outdoor gardening. And there are two types of fertilizer that I use. Again, Eco-Scraps. Eco-Scraps has an excellent dry blend of fertilizer that you can add to your gardens. When adding to any potted plants, you want to add 4 tablespoons every gallon in the container. If you have less than a gallon in the container, just use half a tablespoon and you'll be perfectly fine. The liquid fertilizer that I use is Nature's Choice, but it is a fish and seaweed mix fertilizer. Try to go for the fish and seaweed. That's the best fertilizer to use. It gives it extreme amount of nutrients. You can check the pH levels or the NPK levels on the front to match up the type of plants that you want to grow. Either way, it is beneficial. But be mindful that fish fertilizer is exactly what it is. It's fish. So if you have a weak stomach, you do not want to be pouring this too close to your face. It is an intense smell. It is very pungent, but it is very nutritious to your plants. Typically, when I add liquid fertilizer, I add about a catful to 2 to a 5-gallon pail, and that's perfectly fine per square foot. You can find these fertilizers and more at Home Depot and Lowe's, or you can find it online at Amazon. Both are relatively inexpensive, and because with the liquid fertilizer you don't have to use much, it will last you a long time. Now it's time to transplant. This is a peanut plant that I got from a local nursery, and we're just going to transplant this from a smaller container into a larger container. We're going to gently squeeze the bottom of this container to loosen up the roots so we don't tear them or rip them too much. And we're going to just keep the top of it between our forefinger and middle finger to keep control of it. And as you can see, at the bottom of it is what you call root bound. Root bound is when the plant is growing larger than the container can hold, and the roots continue to grow in a spiral at the bottom of the container. You want to prevent this or reduce this from happening into the new container by loosening up the roots at the bottom, or you can even rip the very bottom portion of your plant that you just took out of that container to remove those root-bound roots, loosen up the ones that remain, and place it into your new container. And I know it sounds very harsh, but I guarantee you it helps benefit the new growth and stimulate the new growth of the plant once you enter into the new container. And now what we're going to do is just add this water or water it down once we're done so that the soil expands and then retracts around your plant's roots. Now we're going to get into topping your plants. Topping your plant is when you clip off the very top portion of your plant to allow for your plant to grow fuller and expand out rather than growing up. What you want to do is find the main stem of your plant, go to the very top portion where you see all of these side shoots growing out, and you just want to take the top portion of your fingers and clip that part of the plant right on off. And what you're doing is you're allowing for this plant to allow the side shoots that you see along the shoot to grow outwards rather than growing up. And in turn, your plant is going to grow fuller, it's going to have a longer plant life, it's going to produce a lot longer. So topping is very helpful and beneficial to growing your plants and growing your plants full, especially with things like herbs like your basils and your sages and rosemary. Topping your plant is very effective, and like I say, you just want to look for those little side shoots that grow along the main stem, go down maybe about 2 leaves down, and just clip off the top of your plant and you'll be perfectly fine. Well, friends, thank you again for joining me on this gardening vlog with your city farmer, Mike the Universal Artist. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see content like this and more, then comment below. And until next time, don't forget, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.